Nebraska school district sued after shutting down school paper with LGBTQ plus content. A school district in Nebraska is facing a lawsuit after a high school shut down its newspaper because students produced an LGBTQ plus edition. The lawsuit states that Grand Island Northwest Public Schools and its superintendent violated the First Amendment rights of students by axing the Viking saga, which had been running for 54 years, in May 2022. The student newspaper staff were made aware that the publication was being pulled 3 days after they published the June edition of the Viking saga, which was a special LGBTQ plus print for Pride Month. On May 22nd, 2022, an email from a school employee said that the print edition had been axed because, quote, the school board and superintendent are unhappy with the last issue's editorial content, end quote. Oh my God. I mean, you know, I'm glad they're suing them because isn't it about freedom of expression?
Yes.
And I mean, for them to do that, it was appropriate. It was Pride Month. Why wouldn't, if you are a newspaper covering events and current events and stuff, why wouldn't you do an edition on LGBTQ plus? Why wouldn't you do that? And I'm sure they have LGBTQ plus students in the school.
Easily.
It's really amazing that First Amendment gets really inconvenient when it's not the views that other people want to hear, which is the purpose of the First Amendment.
Anyway.
That many of our flag waving people on the other side of the aisle love to wrap themselves in, but it's only when they hear the words that they want to hear. That is what the First Amendment is not about. They should probably read the Constitution if they have a copy of it.
Well, we got to make sure they know how to read first.
One thought, related to this paper, we reported this the week that the paper was taken down and that students couldn't do it anymore. It seems to me we get lost in that this is a free press and a free speech issue. It absolutely, clearly is a constitutional issue. That's what's going to go through the courts. But for me, that'll be adjudicated by a federal judge and maybe ultimately the Supreme Court on whether banning a newspaper in high school does a high school and a group of high school students, does the First Amendment apply to them? I suspect a federal court, and even our supermajority Supreme Court is going to say, yeah, pretty much think it does. Yeah. So again, I think that if it gets that far, these people are on solid footing. But you know what's really disappointing and what I really think is missed in this situation with that school is what that school board, what that principal is telling their students. What they're teaching and telling those students by writing a newspaper that had a theme to embrace a Pride Month. Why couldn't that have happened in 1972 if they talked about a Black History Month in February? Why couldn't it be the exact same situation? Exactly. What that school board and that principal is doing, in my opinion, that is so egregious, is they're teaching them, don't be authentic. Don't speak up in defense against the oppressor. And don't be you. Hide yourself. Because if you do, we will ban you, or we will do worse. And I have seen multiple instances in history where that worked out very badly for us. Japan attacked the United States in World War II, and we responded to Japanese Americans in a terrible, terrible way. The Jews were attacked in 1939, and terrible consequences came up to that. And I'm sure there were many, many people afraid to speak up in their high school newspapers. The egregious thing here is the school board and the president of that school not standing behind the First Amendment of speech and press. And this is what you're teaching your students. Very sad to me in that school system.
I think you make a really good point, and I think it speaks to the broader issue that's going on with Don't Say Gay here in Florida and other anti-LGBT legislation that are going through school boards and also state legislatures. impacting education, and it's actually nefarious. It is not only the erasure of us as LGBTQ people, but also the erasure of our past, our struggles from the past, and also our current struggles. And there's a purpose behind it. It's to create an uninformed and unaware populace that is not able to identify when oppression is occurring against LGBTQ people because they don't recognize it from the past. They can't identify those patterns as it applies to other groups like African Americans, Black Americans, the Jews. All of this is they're recycling the same sort of form of same tropes and same forms of oppression that have been used in the past, and they're just trying to make sure that the general public isn't aware or doesn't catch on to what is happening.
Yeah, I remember in school in the 70s, we didn't learn anything about slavery. They just kind of brushed right over it, and let alone LGBTQ. So the same thing it's repeating itself here in this state with the banning of the books.
That's exactly why some very smart protester bought a fruit pie and pushed it in the face of Anita Bryant. That was the value of that moment. Because the symbolism of something is simple. I'm not advocating doing that, by the way. I'm not advocating any kind of violent protest. But the value of that symbol was, wait, we've had enough of this. Now we're going to talk in a completely different way. And maybe that's really where we've got to at this point. If one more person says to me, and I know y'all will 100 times this year, we should get out and vote. Yes, we already know that. What's next?
And I just wanted to say too, real quick, it's important for community, whether the laws are banning whatever, to continue to talk. Because I learned about slavery from community and what really went down. Like school wasn't teaching it, the teacher wasn't teaching.
What state did you grow up in?
In Philadelphia.
You grew up in Philly.
I grew up in Philly.
Okay, this is very interesting. And in what years were you in elementary school during the?
Don't tell me.
You have a birthday coming up. Just give it up.
But in the 70s.
In the 70s.
Yeah,
Okay.
early
I find this very interesting because I grew up in your neighboring state. I grew up in New Jersey. And I was going to school in the late 70s, early 80s, and we were forced to learn every single little thing about slavery.
Wow.
I mean, it was very...
Sarasota County.
We were very heavily educated.
Isn't that?
That's why I'm wondering, I'm like, how are we in neighboring states? And you didn't get that. That's wild.
Y'all should have visited the
subject to interpretation too.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.